Hi there, so tonight I'm going to string Dunlop Revelation Pro and a Farag racket. See the signature on there. Now this is quite a divisive racket actually. By divisive what I mean is it's a very good racket, but lots of players find that it's too stiff, that it doesn't have enough feel in the racket. Clearly a very good control racket, but words like sort of plank of wood spring to mind. That's what's commonly described to me when somebody picks it off the shelf and uses it for the first time. There are a few reasons for this, which I'll go into once I'm actually stringing it, but the main reason I personally believe, I think it is quite a stiff frame, and if you've got a frame that's very, very stiff, and also with quite a close string bed, quite a dense string bed that is, what you want to do is you want to soften the string bed up a little bit. So personally I think they come strung probably high 20s. I've just strung one of these rackets at 24 and it felt significantly less tense than the racket that I'm about to string now, which I've just cut the factory strings out of. Then keeping in mind that the factory strings would have been in this racket, it's about 3 or 4 years old in terms of the series, even though this one's actually a brand new one. You know, God knows what tension it was actually strung at. So I'm going to demonstrate a way in which I would string this racket, certainly for professional players, but also for the average club user, so that they can get the most out of it. And the chief thing is actually stringing it with the cross strings coming down from the head to the throat. I'm going to use an around the world pattern, which I'll demonstrate now. This is one which I've used on a couple of pro players that use this racket. It actually shifts the I guess the kind of sweet spot in the racket around as well, because what happens when you string the cross strings from throat to head, which is how they would normally go from the factory on this racket because of the string pattern, what you're doing is you're kind of pinching all the tension in at the throat, and it's kind of like a balloon. I've discussed this in a few videos before. It's kind of a balloon, so you're kind of pulling all the tension in here because the frame will move, it will distort, and by the time you've actually come to the top, the racket isn't in the right shape it's supposed to. You might not notice it to the eye, but trust me, there is a slight difference, and you'll have way too much tension at the top, whereas if you string it from the head down, you actually get the tension more evenly spread, so it'll feel much better. Also, I'll string it a lot looser, so I'll string it at 24 as opposed to the high 20s, which I believe they normally come in. Now, just for clarity, just good picture frame that, hey? Just for clarity, the majority of rackets you get, you can buy 4 or 5 rackets from the same batch, from the same place at the same time, and largely speaking they will all feel different tensions. Factory stringing isn't always the best. It's normally done the quickest and in the easiest way as well. So that's probably enough talking from me, but just a few reasons as to why I'm going to string this in the way I'm which I'm going to string it. Cool, so let's get started. So first of all, just so you know, I'm going to use this side here as the short side as opposed to the other side. I do this quite often. It's just one of the ways I do it, but obviously if I'm teaching you how to string a racket, this is just my method of doing it. I'd normally suggest using the other side as the short side, just from a kind of best practice point of view. But on this particular racket, with the technique I'm going to use, by using this side as the short side, what it means, I'm not sure if you can see just here, but where you've got the tie-off hole markings, it just makes it look a little bit neater, so that you're not having them on the side where you haven't got the tie-off markings. It's not going to make any difference to it other than a kind of aesthetic thing, really. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I've just measured off 5.5 full arm spans worth of string, so it's probably roughly about 9.5, 10 meters worth, and I'm just going to measure out for the short side how much string I need to use. So on this one, I know I'm going to need about 8 racket heads worth of string for the short side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's my short side done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed through the short side through the racket. And by the way, just a little bit of housekeeping here, just make sure that when you mount the racket, make sure that the logo is the right way up on the butt cap. It's just one of those things which should really be done. Just going to feed through the long side here. Hopefully you find this angle which I'm using useful. I've kind of got a camera mount in my way a little bit, but it means that you can really see the whole frame as it's going through. First of all, I'm just going to tension both the strings just so that I can set the starting the first clamp. I'm now going to release the tension because I've got the first clamp in place, and always important to do that. I'm just using it just to basically gauge the first clamp and make sure that I'm not going to be cutting the strings up, but always make sure that you actually retension the first string you're going to tension afterwards, otherwise you're getting a half pull. So just going up. And again, so I'm just stringing 2 strings on this side, just tensioning 2 strings on that side rather. So I'm going to go 2, then 2 ahead, then 2 more. So I'm now switching to the other side. So this is my long side that I'm doing now. And again, it's always really important that you balance out the tension on the main strings. So what you don't want to do, which is a common mistake that people make, is to string one whole side then do the other. When we talk about frame distortion, it's obviously not good for the frame, stringing one whole side. You're putting loads of tension on one and then pulling it all back in on the other. So it either causes frame distortion or can weaken it significantly. So I'm now level up on this, so I'm just going to do 2 ahead. Just a bit of fluff coming through the grommets for some reason. These things sometimes. Okay, so now all I'm going to do is just feed this string through, just to save me a bit of time for me to do that. And now I'm back onto the other side because I've gone 2 ahead on the tensioning there. But honestly, for any of you who want to know how your racket's been strung, if the cross strings have been strung correctly, there's a really easy way of finding out, because you'll have long loops on the outside. Sorry, if the veins have been strung correctly and the crosses have come from the head to the throat, because there'll be long loops of string on the outside of the frame if they've been strung throat to head. Reason being is that the last main will effectively come from here all the way down to the tie off there, so you're having a loop like that, which isn't great for tension maintenance, is it? So that's a surefire way of knowing if it's been strung incorrectly. And when I say incorrectly, that's how it is at the factory, but it's not the best. So I'm just going to use my starting clamp, which is my trusty Babolat, I think the best in the business, with my Parnell pad. just to protect the frame, protect the string a little bit. And then I can take this off here. Now the reason why I've done that, so I've only strung 6 main strings on the short side here, is because I'm not going to be using the last main for a little while now. And I'm going to do the same on this side. I'm only going to string 6 mains to start with on this side. I'm not sure why I'm getting a bit of fluff. I think there's been a bit of fluff that's generated in the grommets from the factory here, and it just seems to be pushing through. Okay, so this is the 6 main on the long side that's coming through now. And I'm just going to clamp it a little bit further down. And there's a reason for that. It's because I need to clear some space when I'm going down through the crosses. So for the eagle-eyed, you'll notice that there's 12 mains that are tensioned here rather than 14. If I had 14 mains tensioned, then they'd be coming down here, and I'd have to start the crosses at the bottom, which is absolutely not what I want to do. So from here, I'm not going to start the crosses at the very top grommet, which would be right here. I'm going to skip that grommet, skip the mains grommet, go down to the 3rd grommet to the right side of that last main there. So effectively the 2nd cross down, which I'm going to start on. This is the first one. And again, there's a reason for that, which will become apparent later. So just make sure you weave it through everyone. One of the good things about doing this particular method is that you get really, really good tension maintenance on all of the main strings, because none of the mains are used for tie-offs. It's only the top cross, which I'll come to later, and the bottom cross, which are pretty insignificant really, as long as you've got reasonable tension on them. But that's one of the main reasons why this is quite a good method as well. And also, because you're only stringing the crosses through 12 main strings, actually makes it a little bit quicker as well. So bonus all around. And just what I'm doing here is I'm just weaving the crosses one ahead. There's a good reason for this, which is to basically reduce the amount of friction that goes through these cross strings as they're pulling through the mains. So always a good way to look after your strings a bit better. I'm trying to pull a fair bit of the string through before you tension off here again, because it's less string to pull through it towards the end as well. So it's taking me a little bit longer to do this than it normally would, just because of the camera mount. But I should still get this racket done in about 16-17 minutes, I guess. Another little tip: straighten your strings out as you're going through. If you don't straighten your strings out like I'm doing with the crosses, all that happens is you get left with a big smiley face going down your string, which actually means that you're not pulling at the right tension. So you're actually stringing a lot less than what the desired tension is going to be, which is absolutely what you do not want, especially if you're doing batches of rackets. If you're doing 2 or 3 rackets that are all supposed to be identical, if you're not pulling crosses straight, you find that the tension is uneven as well. As you can see, it's not really taking that long. I mean, this is with me going fairly easy with it because I'm talking, and I'm not always the greatest multitasker, so talking and stringing and thinking about weaves and patterns and things isn't necessarily always my strongest suit. So I'm just taking my time on this, nice and easy, no need to rush. So as you can see, it's pretty standard stringing the crosses down here, except you've got 2 less to do each time. Just having to alter my hands to come through there. I mean, I'll always straighten the strings after I've finished anyway, just to try and get rid of any unevenness at the end, but it is just good to straighten these. So, talking about the racket at the beginning of the video, I was mentioning that this is generally quite a stiff frame, and lots of players buy it thinking they're going to play like Farag when they buy it. However, because it can be quite stiff, a lot of players decide to go down to the light version, which is what Sarah Jane Perry uses. Now, this is the old model of this. There is another model which has come out, which is a darker red colour, which Farag uses now. Again, slightly different construction in them, but largely speaking, they feel fairly similar as rackets go. So don't think necessarily because it feels really stiff when you first get it that you should immediately change it. You've chosen the wrong racket. There are things you can do to change it quite drastically. When I'm not get my strings to work. But it is interesting because nearly all the people I know who buy this racket really don't get on with it to start with, unless they're used to it, unless they just like a really stiff frame with tons of control. But that's the beauty of squash and any other racket sport, so we're not all the same. We all have slightly different preferences in our rackets. It'd be a dull world if we all like the same stuff. So you can actually probably hear the strings coming through the grommets here. So it's brand new racket, so new grommets. Only ever been restrung once before, which was at the factory, and you've got quite a waxy string here in the Tactifiber 305. So you can actually hear a bit of kind of waxiness creeping through as tension's being pulled. But for a lot of squash stringers out there, even at tournaments, especially at tournaments, sometimes they won't string this way because they don't know how to do it, or because they think the players won't notice the difference, which in some cases that may well be the case, but personally I'd rather a bad string job not be the reason for somebody hitting a tin, when if it's just strung a little bit better they could be hitting that nick. So as you're just seeing now, actually I should just stop talking there, I'll take this out. What I've done is I'm going to miss the next cross and I'm going to loop it round, and on the final main string here, you can tell by the direction of it, I'm going to bring the string through and I'm going to then come up. So I'm going to weave it through the cross strings that I've just done, all the way to the top. Pull tension, leave it in there for a little bit longer, play with it a little bit, just because you've woven it through those cross strings. Just give it a little bit of a tug just to make sure the tension's right on there. Just going to clamp it up there. Forget about that string for now, and I'm going to move on to the short side. So very carefully take that clamp off, yeah? So release it like quite firm without moving, lift it up and then pull it off. Reason for that is you don't want to damage the string that's in there. So just going to clamp that at the top. And then we're going to do the opposite to what we did here. We're going to weave down on here. So this can be a little bit fiddly just because there isn't a lot of space in between the strings, but it shouldn't take too long. And I'm now going into the final main hole down this side. So this is basically creating the last mains. Just going to clamp that off. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to install the final cross. I'm not going to clamp it off because we've got our clamp that we need there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it through, just making sure you don't cross over the last main that was pulled on there. Just going to weave it through. This is why we leave that top one blank. And I'm going to use my trusty starting clamp again, so I can then have full use of both of the clamps on here. So there we go. So that side's done. So I can now unclamp that one because it's being held here, and I can start doing the final few cross strings. So I've got the camera mount just firmly in the way of my arm. Let's see if I can just get around there. Good. And just being careful that you're going over under the right strings here. So what I'm just doing is, as you string the racket, the frame pulls in a bit. So I'm just ever so slightly just adjusting the shoulders in the posts on here, just to keep it nice and snug so it's not moving about too much, but only ever very, very slightly, because you don't want to over tension anything. Now, as you might have noticed, I'm not stringing one ahead on the final crosses just because there isn't a huge amount of string left. So just, again, go slowly because it's getting a little bit tighter towards the end here. It's important not to pull that string through too fast, because you want to look after that string as much as possible. And we're actually very nearly done here, actually. So I guess it's going to be the last cross installed here. So quite often, sometimes, especially with the final mains, is I'll add a little bit of extra tension onto the final mains that are being pulled. You don't need to on the final mains on this racket because you have crosses that come afterwards. And to be honest, I always just keep the tension the same, or generally keep the tension the same on the last cross and the top cross without adding anything extra to it, because you don't really need it. And sometimes actually it feels a bit nicer to just have maybe that pound of tension loss on the top and the bottom anyway. Not that you'll even notice it. If you tie off the knots correctly, it should be pretty much bang on anyway. So just finish off this parallel knot. So nice and tight. A little tug at the end. Always important to release the clamp as you're holding that knot as you're pulling it, just to prevent any slippage. Trim the tail. The good thing with the parnell knot is that the knot always points in the same direction, which is upwards. So now just got to tension this final top cross again. Now we're going to be done. But I would say always try and get the clamp as close to the frame as you can, just to minimise any kind of tension loss really. Just going to trim that last bit there quickly. Looping around, up and under. If you want to learn how to do the parnell knot, there's loads of videos. I've probably shown people how to do it in a few before, but it's the best knot by far. Really nice and neat, and the knots will never come undone either, which is good news. As you can see, the knot is pointing up, so it all looks nice and uniformed. So I'm just going to move the clamps out of the way a bit. Just going to do a bit of straightening on these strings. And invariably what you'll find is when you take the racket off, the mounts afterwards off the machine, you'll always find a couple of strings that a little bit crooked, because sometimes you just have to use your fingers afterwards to do it. But what I've done is I've straightened the strings out as I've been going through, so this is really just to be a bit anal about it really. With Technofibre especially though, what you don't want to do is leave the strings straight until later on, because they will notch and it'll be more difficult to actually straighten them out. So you're much better off doing it perfectly now if you can. Don't forget to straighten those mains either. It's one of the common issues that I see with people is doing the crosses and then forgetting to straighten the mains out. Probably seen the camera moving up and down a little bit here, sorry. That's where I've been straightening out those mains. It's just lots of few sideways, but I'll adjust those with my fingers after. All done.